Masechet Sukkah, Daf Chavav 26. We're continuing our discussion of exemptions, people who do not have to sit in a sukkah. A lot of interesting and some relevant cases. So we begin at the top. Tanya, we have a baraita. Amar Rabbi Hananya ben Akavya, Koteve Sefarim, Tefillin u'mezuzot, hen v'tagrehen v'tagre tagrehen, v'chol ha'oskim b'mlechet shamayim, la tuyeh mochre techelet. פטורין מקריאת שמע ומן התפילין ומן התפילה ומן התפילין ומכל מצוות האמורות בתורה לקיים דברי רבי יוסי הגלילי שהיה רבי יוסי הגלילי אומר העוסק במצווה פטור מן המצווה. Okay, so people write stam sofrim that are actually involved in writing them, so that's a mitzvah. Not only them, but also the sellers, if the salesman at Eichler's, or right, the middleman, right, and anyone along the chain, all the people who are selling these items, and anyone who's involved in Melechet Shamayim. So that Baraita says that, like who? What does that include? That this is an interruption of the Baraita to say La Tuyeh, this Aramaic, right? To include those who sell Techelet. That's interesting. Seems they still had the tradition of what Techelet is back in the time of the Talmud. All these people do not have to say Shema, Tefillah, Tefillin, and all other mitzvot, including Sukkah. That's why I bring it here also. Because Rabbi Yossi HaGalilee said, you're involved in one mitzvah, you have to do another mitzvah. You're, your boss tells you to go on a trip and do this, and you don't have to come to the staff meeting because you're involved in something that the boss is telling you, so you don't have to do something else. Okay, this is a very interesting halacha. Does this mean that if you're a salesperson at Eichler's, you never have to pray? Right. So not so fast, because first of all, we saw there's machloket yesterday. Are you only patur if it's impossible for you to do the other thing or very difficult? Let's say it's easy. You can do both. So that's one opinion. If you can do both, then try to do both. Also, if you're doing it mostly as a business, it's different than if you're doing it lishma. So therefore, Eichel is not open at sunrise. You can go to Minyan and, pray and do everything. At that time, you're not selling it. And it is also for business. So therefore, no, I don't think it would apply. But technically, this is halacha.
If you're writing Kriyat Shema, you could actually say it.
That's right. As you're writing it.
If you're writing Tefillin, you could just write the Tefillin and read it as you write it, Yoseh.
Right, that's a good point. As you're writing it, but it takes a long time. You make a mistake, you change it. Okay, it's hard to have concentration. Next, Tenor Banan, Holeche Derachim Bayom, Piturim in Sukkah Bayom, Vechayavim Balayla. Someone who's traveling during the day, then they don't have to sit in the Sukkah during the day, but then they come somewhere at night and they're resting there, then they have to have a Sukkah at night. You see, this is not traveling for a mitzvah, this is traveling for any reason. Traveling for business, you're traveling for pleasure, you're going on a tiyul. According to this baraita, while you're in transit, you don't have to sit in the sukkah. If you're traveling at night, people don't usually travel at night, but for whatever reason you are, then you don't have to sit in the sukkah at night. But then you come to wherever you are and you're staying there during the day, so then you have to find a sukkah during the day. If you're taking a long flight, day and night, or a long drive, you're driving cross country and you're driving day and night, then you're patur from the sukkah, both during the day and during the night. If you're going for a mitzvah, then you're patur day and night. It sounds like if it's for mitzvah, then it doesn't matter at what time you're traveling. It's more across the board exemption. Ki havu aili beshabbeta derigla lebe resh galuta havu ganu arakta desura amre anan shiluchem mitzvah anan upeturi. These two rabbis, they would go during Shabbat Chol HaMoed to the home of the exilarch, and they went to study Torah with him. Many of the exilarchs were great Talmidei Chachamim, some were not. But so they went there and they would stop by and sleep on the bank of Surah while they're on the way. And they said, we are Shulachem Mitzvah, and therefore we don't have to sit and sleep in the Sukkah.
And also, there was a story earlier where he put the decorations very low. They said, oh, we only sit in
Exactly. Also, right, they were visiting the Resh Galuta's house, and they actually were in the sukkah, but it was too low. The decorations were too low, and it says, "Oh, see, we're patur," even though they were actually staying there. They weren't in transit at the time. So shulchan mitzvah, even when they're not in transit, don't have to sleep in the sukkah. Okay, Shulchan Aruch says posek halacha like this, which would mean if someone during Chol Hamoed is going on a business trip, let's say, Davar Haved, you're allowed to go. Or many people travel, families travel on Sukkot. In Israel, there's youth groups, they go and travel on Sukkot. According to this, while they're in transit, they don't have to sit in the Sukkah. This is not very popularized, I think, because educationally, then everybody will just go away and you don't sit in the Sukkah the whole time. Also, I think it only applies when you're actually in transit, not when you get there and you're sleeping in a hotel. Then then you're there. That's your place. We learned this from teshivu ke'ayin taduru, that just like when you're in a house, you don't confine yourself to your house 24/7, right? You go out. Sometimes you go on a trip and then you don't sleep in your house. So the sukkah shouldn't be any more permanent than your house. That sometimes when you leave, you don't always sleep in your house or eat in your house. Okay, so that's a very important and interesting halacha. Tenor banan shomer ha'ir bayom peturim min asukah bayom chayabin balayla. If you're a watchman of the city, so you have to walk around the city, and therefore you can't sit in the sukkah. If you're watching it during the day, then you don't have to sit in sukkah during the day, but you have to at night. Shomer ha'ir balayla peturim min alayla min asukah balayla v'chein bayom. If you have the night shift, then you don't have to sleep in the sukkah at night, but you do have to find one during the day. If you're on duty day and night, then there's no need for you to sit in the sukkah at all during the day or night. So the first one is talking about a city where you actually have to walk around. If you're watching a garden, then it's not that big and you don't have to walk around. Nevertheless, you don't have to sit in sukkah day or night. And now we question that. Wait, the last one with the garden, you could build a sukkah in the middle of the garden and you sit there and watch it, right? It's not, you don't have to walk around the whole thing. So no, you don't have to, because it's the same as your dwelling place, as we said before. Just like your house, you live in it usually, but when you're going and you're guarding something and doing something else, then you don't sleep in your house. So too here, you do not have to. So that's his reason, right? I'm guarding my garden. I don't sleep in my house when I'm guarding the garden. So therefore, I don't have to build one. Rava Amar Pisah Koral Ganab. Rava says a different reason. Now, anytime there's a breach, that's an invitation to a thief. If I have a fence and there's one breach, of course thieves are going to go there. The same thing, if I build a sukkah and I'm only looking in one direction, I don't see the garden behind it, then because there's walls, I need some walls, right? Then thieves are going to go there. So you can't just rely. It's not practical to make a guard house for a garden that is a sukkah, because it won't be a good guard. You can't just guard most of it. Any part that you can't see will be no good. So that's two opinions. My benai, what will be the practical difference between these two reasons? Let's say you're only guarding a pile of fruit, and so you can have it all right in front of you, right there. So then in that case, according to Rava, it's no problem. I could build a sukkah. The fruit is right in front of me, and I could watch it the whole time. I don't have to worry about what's behind me. According to Abaye, so since if I'm guarding on guard duty, I leave my house. So I'm allowed to leave my house. When I'm allowed to leave my sukkah. I treat my sukkah just like I treat my house. And even though technically I could build a sukkah to guard the fruit, I don't have to, because I wouldn't normally do that. I wouldn't normally build a house to guard the fruit either. Okay, good. Now we go to the next part of the Mishnah. Holim someone who is ill, and all those who are taking care of the ill person, all do not have to sit in a sukkah. Tenor Rabbanan, chole shameru lo chole sheyesh bo sakana, ela afilu chole she'en bo sakana. Not only someone who is in life danger, that person, of course, is patur from anything that needs to get him better. Rather, even someone who doesn't have his life in danger, en bo sakana, usually means he's bedridden. And not only that, even if his eye hurts or he has a headache, Even that, even just a small thing, and he's not gonna feel good by sleeping in the sukkah. He can rest better in the house. All those people are patur. אמר רבן שמעון בן גמליאל, פעם אחת חשתי בעיניי בקיסרי, ותיר רבי יוסי ברבי לישון, אני ומשמשי חוץ לסוכה. Rashbag says, this happened to me. I had my eye was hurting, and when I was in the city of Caesarea was always a mostly non-Jewish city. It was the seat of the Roman government, where they ruled Israel, what they called it, Palestine, from Caesarea. And even though eventually there was a larger Jewish community there, and according to Professor Lieberman, the Masechet Nizikim, the Babot of Yerushalmi, were composed in Caesarea. So there were a lot of great sages that lived in Caesarea. Nevertheless, it was a very mixed city, a lot of non-Jews. Anyway, one time he was there, and Rabbi Yoseh Be'Rebi. Be'Rebi could mean the son of Rabbi, but it seems to be here an honorific. Rabbi Yoseh, the great one, the great rabbi, referring to Rabbi Yoseh ben Halafta. And he told me I'm allowed to sleep outside the sukkah because my eye hurts, not only me, but even my attendants. So this exemption that the Mishnah says regarding attendance applies even to someone who's only a little bit sick. Rav shera lerav acha bardela lemigna bechilta besuka mishum baki. So other similar cases is Rav permitted Rav acha to sleep under a canopy in the sukkah because of mosquitoes or some kind of insects. So he was in the sukkah, but he's under a net, and a net that presumably has some kind of roof. And therefore, he's not really sleeping in the sukkah. I mean, he could have got inside because he's mista'ed, but whatever, he wanted to sleep in the sukkah. It was nice out. He wanted to at least feel like maybe there's one opinion he can follow, minority opinion. And so he was permitted. This is important because it shows that if there's a lot of bugs in the sukkah, that's also considered mitzta'ed. Rava, shera le Rabbi Acha bar Ada, le migna bar mitalalta, mishum sircha de garashita. So Rava permitted Rav Acha to sleep outside the sukkah because it was smelly. There was some kind of a sand that they put on the floor of the sukkah, and it was, and therefore he was permitted to sleep outside the sukkah. Rava leta'ameh da'amar Rava mista'er patur min sukkah. Right, that was Rava who permitted that person to sleep outside because it was smelly, and he says the general rule that anyone who suffers because they're sitting in the sukkah does not have to sleep there. Now we have a challenge to Rava from our Mishnah, because our Mishnah said only someone who is sick has to, and him and the servants sleep outside the sukkah. It sounds like if you're sick, some kind of real sickness, even if it's a headache, something, whereas just a minor suffering, I'm a little cold, there's too many bugs, that is not included in it. If that was included, the Mishnah should have said, it should have said mista'ed, and then I would know all the more so someone who's sick. So the answer is Amri, cholehu mishameshav peturim. Mista'ed hu patur umeshameshav lo. Now the Mishnah is giving a category where not only the person, but even his attendants are patur. That applies to a sick person. Whereas if it's just a cold or too many mosquitoes, then that exemption applies only to the one person himself, not to the person's attendants. So that's why the Mishnah mentioned only that category. All right, and now we get to the last category in the Mishnah. You're allowed to have a snack outside the sukkah anytime. How much is that? What is the definition of a snack? Amar Rav Yosef tarte o telat be'eh. 2 or 3 eggs. Now this seems like quite a lot. You have a whole omelet. There's 2 or 3 eggs. I mean, in terms of halakha, an egg is 2 kizetot. So this would be 4, 6 kizetot. 1 egg we estimate is a whole pita. Whole pita is like a kabesa. So 2 or 3 pitas. This is like a lot of food, and all that's achilat aray. Amar Rav Yosef tarte o telat be'amar Rabbi Abaye v'hazim nin sagin sagile leinish behachi v'avele sudat keba. He says, what are you talking about? That's a lot of food. Many times a person eats that much and they're full, and that's their whole meal. So your amount is too high. No, it's just a taste. For example, before the students would go to the lecture of the rabbi in the morning, they would taste something, because if the lecture goes long, they wouldn't have a full breakfast. In the case the lecture goes long, so they would just, on their way, eat a piece of cheese or something, have one sambusak, right? A little bit. So it means a taste. That's how much, not sitting for a meal. So however much that is, something, a little breakfast on the go, that's the amount. Okay.
This is a repeat from Masechet Yoma. It's also printed to prove what exactly a kavetza is, how much is required. So you guys had Sukkah. I forgot where it was.
Right. Kotebet is enough that you'll be satiated. This sounds like it should be less. Okay, so Rav Yosef says more, Abaye says less. Tenor Rabbanan, ochelin achilat arai chos lasukkah, ve'en yeshenim shenat arai chos lasukkah. Now we're going to compare eating to sleeping, and the Baraita says some is just like eating, so too you can eat a snack outside the sukkah, but it's different to sleeping. You cannot take a doze outside the sukkah. No dozing, even a snack of a sleep. My ta'ama, Rav Asher, gezerah Hashem hayeradim. Rav Asher says this is a gezerah, rabbinic enactment, because you just say, how often? I'm just going to close my eyes for 5 minutes, and then you fall asleep, you wake up 3 hours later. So, and you are not in control. Whereas eating, you could say, okay, I'm just going to eat a little bit. I'm just going to have a little fruit, a little cookie. So that's okay. You can control it. And therefore, sleeping is more machmir than eating. Amar le Abaye. Now hold on, we have to look at the generations here a second, because Rav Asher is the 6th generation Amora, basically the last generation. Abaye is 4th generation. So how could Abaye have said something, challenged Rav Asher, right? A 4th generation to a 6th generation, very unlikely that they ever met. So this doesn't really work. So if you look at manuscripts, you see that Rav Asher does not appear in any manuscript of the Talmud Bavli, and almost all of them it's Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was around before, right? At the top of the page, Rav Yosef was there. So it's Rav Yosef and Abaye. They're speaking to each other. They are contemporaries. There is one or two gezerot that don't have Rav Yosef, but have other contemporaries, but almost all have Rav Yosef. How did the printed editions get Rav Asher here? I don't know. They don't sound alike. They don't look alike. I'm not sure how this mistake crept in, but it looks like it's definitely a mistake, because not one manuscript has this. So let's read it instead. Amar Rav Yosef, Gezerah Hashem hayeradim, and Abaye says, Ela haditnan, Yashen Adam shenat arai betfilin, avelo shenat keva, lechu Shem hayeradim. Abaye challenges Rav Yosef from tefillin, because tefillin also. But now we're going to go into a lengthy discussion about sleeping with tefillin on. Baraita says you can take a short doze with tefillin on, but not a full sleep. So why can't you sleep with tefillin on? I mean, it's not very respectful to do it at all. Also, you might pass gas when you're sleeping. You might have an emission while you're sleeping. So there's all kind of various reasons. Okay. Anyway, so how come you're allowed to take a short nap with tefillin, and you don't say the same gezerah that you may want to take a short nap, but you'll end up sleeping for a long time, and so that shouldn't be allowed either. Amar Rav Yosef bered Rav Eli b'moseh shenato la'acherim. Oh no, this baraita is talking about a case where you tell someone else to wake you up. You say, listen, I only want to sleep for 10 minutes. Wake me up before that. So then you have a guard. That's why you don't have a gezerah. But yeah, you're right. If you didn't have anybody around to wake you up, then you wouldn't be allowed to wear tefillin either. You'd apply the same gezerah.
Is this the same Rav Yosef that we're assuming the first one to be?
I don't think so. It's a good question. Matkif le Rab Mesharshiya. Arbich arba sarich. So Rav Mesharshiya says, I don't like this loophole that you ask someone to wake you up, because your guarantor himself will need a guarantor. You go up at night or whatever. You say, oh, you wake me up. Maybe the guy you told to wake you up, he himself is going to sleep, right? Sometimes you're all together somewhere. Wake me up in the morning. Who's going to wake up the guy who's supposed to wake you up in the morning? So you can't rely on someone else to wake you up. Ela amar Rabba bar Chana amar Rabbi Yochanan. We're talking about where someone takes a nap by putting his head down between his knees. It's an uncomfortable position. You're not going to sleep for a long time there, right? If you get into a deep sleep, you're going to fall over and wake yourself up. So therefore, that's the case where it's allowed. But otherwise, if you were lying down, then it would not be permitted even to take a nap with tefillin on. So it's consistent. Rava Amar en keba lashena. Rava said, no, there's no such thing as a difference between arai and keva regarding sleep, because sometimes even a short nap, you feel rested and awake. And therefore, you shouldn't wear tefillin. You shouldn't take any kind of sleep, not a nap and not a long sleep with tefillin on at all. And we shouldn't make a difference between them. Okay. Taneh hada yashen adam betfilin shenat arai avalo shenat keba. Now we have a contradiction between two baraitot. One, which we just read, is that you can take a nap, but not a long sleep with tefillin. V'tanya idach ben keba ben arai. That the other one says that it's permitted even to take a full sleep or a nap. V'tanya idach, and the third one, lo keba velo arai. Neither. You can't have any sleep. The second one says you can take any kind of sleep. The third one says not even a nap. So now we have all three possibilities with the baraitot. Okay, so how are we going to resolve them? We don't want to say they all contradict, so we're going to say they all apply in different cases. Lakashya. The one that says that you can take only a short nap is when you're holding it in your hand. If you're holding in your hand, short nap, you'll hang on to it. If you take a long sleep while it's in your hand, you're going to end up letting go and it's going to fall on the floor. And we don't want that to happen. So that's that case. The one that says that you can sleep the whole time, that is talking about when it's on your head. Because then, right? The Torah says that you can take a brief nap, right? A brief nap is permitted. That's, let me change my mind. Okay. The one that says that you cannot not sleep at all, that's where you're holding it in your hand. Because even a brief nap, you might let it go. The one that says you can take a nap but not a long sleep, that's when it's on your head. Because when it's on your head, your brief nap, you'll be okay. But a long sleep, then you might pass gas. And the other one that says that you can take even a long nap, that's when you remove it and cover it, like almost basically put it away, then you can sleep. Even though you're sleeping next to it, you don't have to worry that you're going to roll onto it and smash it or anything like that. So we resolved all three baraitot. Okay, so now we do see that in some cases there's a difference between a nap and a long sleep. How much is a nap? The amount it would take to walk 100 amot, about 150 feet, about a minute, not very long. That's a short nap, so not very long at all. We have a baraita that supports this. If someone did fall asleep with tefillin and had an emission, so he shouldn't touch the tefillin because he's tameh, it's not nice. So rather, he holds on to the strap. But not the box itself. So hold on to the strap and remove the tefillin. Usually it's not respectful to hang the tefillin, right? You shouldn't do that. But in this case, there's no other option. Chachamim say you can sleep in a temporary way, but not a permanent way. This is why we brought the baraita, because it defines a nap as being the amount of time it takes to walk 100 amot. So that's the support. That's one opinion. Amarav, asur la'adam lishon bayom yoter meshenat hasus. Okay, now we're talking about not tefillin, but sleeping during the day in general. Rav says you should not sleep during the day more than a horse sleeps. How long does a horse sleep? 60 breaths. So I looked it up. I read a couple articles on horses sleeping. It's actually quite interesting. Horses sleep standing up. They lock their legs in, and they can sleep that way during the day. They also do need REM sleep, and for that they lie down. And they need like a couple of hours of sleep throughout the day, but they don't take it all in one shot. They usually sleep for like 20 minutes, and then they wake up in another 20 minutes. They sleep as much during the day as during the night if left on their own. So that's okay. There's a lot of discussion about how much the sleep is of a horse, but it depends on if they're taking it all at one shot. But I guess it's about 20 minutes or so. Okay. Abaye hava nayim kidem ayil bepumpadita de bekube. Kade ale Rav Yosef ad matai asel tishkab matai takum b'shinatecha. Abaye, I skipped a line. Sorry. Amar Abaye shenate shinte demor kederab. Udrav kedebi. Udrabi ke de David. David ke Susya. Susya shetin nishme. So Abaye says about a previous generation, all the previous generations, that when the Rav slept, how much did he sleep? The same amount as Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi slept the same as David. They were both from the lineage of David, so there's something special about this. And David slept only ever as much as a horse sleeps. This, in its original context, might be sleeping at all, even during the night, right? David's famous for not sleeping much at night. He would stay up to learn Torah. And how much would they sleep? Like a horse, right? They take a few naps, but no more than 20 minutes or so. So Abaye reported that in the name of the previous generations. But Abaye himself, he slept a lot. He would sleep the amount of time it takes to travel from Pupadita to Be Kube. This is about 4 parsaot. Each one is like 72 minutes. This will be over 7 hours of sleep, which is not bad if it's a nighttime sleep. It's good to get a good sleep, right? Rambam says you should get 8 hours. So, but Rav Yosef said about Abaye, right? Until when, you sleepyhead, you lazy person, right? Get up. And so Rav Yosef thought this was too much sleep, and he shouldn't sleep all that much. Okay, so very interesting. Now, tenor Rabbanan, hanichnas lishon bayom rasa choles rasa maniach. If someone is going and going to take a nap during the day, if he wants to take off the tefillin, he can. We're talking about back in that day, they used to wear tefillin all day. We don't know exactly. In the Dead Sea caves, we found tefillin. They don't look like our tefillin. They're not square. They're like little pouches, very, very small. They're so tiny. It's amazing how they wrote that small. And if it's shaped like that, you can see how it would be more comfortable to wear all day. It's hard to imagine that the big ones that we have today, that you would use it all day. The old Sephardic custom is to use small ones, right? So they probably were smaller in those days, although the Dead Sea sect tefillin would not be halachically kosher because they're not the right shape. Okay, anyway, they will sleep with them all day. And what if a person does want to take a nap during the day? So if he wants, he can take it off, or he can leave it on. Balayla, at night, you should take it off and not leave it on at all. This might be following, there is a halacha follows the opinion that says we don't wear tefillin at night, but there is an opinion that says that tefillin, that nighttime is the zman tefillin also. So it sounds like this is following that opinion that, yeah, wear it at night, but not when you're sleeping.
Could it be that it's following the opinion that you do wear it at night, but because of the Shina, that's
exactly, wear it at night when you're up and not when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. דבר רבי נתן, רבי יוסי אומר, הילדים לעולם חוסין ואינן מניחין מפני שרגילים בטומאה. ילדים here doesn't mean little kids, they won't wear it at all, but it means like young adults, that they should take it off and not put it on because they're more excited and they're more likely to see a seminal emission when they are sleeping. So young adults should take it off at night when they're sleeping. So Rabbi Yosef is the one that said this. What did Rabbi Yosef say that remember that takana that Ezra made, that someone who is a Baal Keri cannot pray or learn Torah while they are Baal Keri until they go to a mikveh. And so he seems to be following that by saying that also someone who has a chance of being Baal Keri should not wear tefillin. Amar Abaye, biladim unshotehen immahen askinan shema yabo lider gel tava. He says no, he wasn't referring to that. He's talking about a case of young adults with their wives with them, and maybe they'll forget that they're wearing tefillin and engage in relations with their wives, and that is not, that's demeaning to the tefillin, and so therefore they should not wear tefillin at all. And to follow up on that, shachach v'shimesh mitato betfilin, eno ochez lo barsuav lo b'kesisa ad sheyitol yadav yitelem mipnei sheyadayim askaniyot hem. Someone who forgot, they didn't realize that they're wearing tefillin, and they have relations with their wife with the tefillin on. So you should not touch the tefillin, not the strap and not the box. Rather, go and wash your hands first, and then touch them, because the hands are active. Right, hands are touching all kinds of unclean places at that time, and therefore it's not appropriate to touch even the straps with the tefillin on. So see how they wore tefillin all day and how much they got used to it. They didn't even realize they're wearing tefillin. Okay, very interesting. Totally different. Now I think you can understand why over the years the rabbis decided, tefillin you have to have a tremendous amount of respect for, and therefore we only wear it while we're praying, and so we're concentrating on them because otherwise it's very easy to lose our concentration and not to treat the tefillin with respect. All right, last Mishnah is a famous one. We've seen it before in Masechet Yoma. Maaseh ve'heviu lo l'Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai lit'om et hatabshil, u'Rabban Gamliel shnei kotabot u'deli shel mayin, ve'ameru ha'alum la'sukkah. There's a follow-up on the snack. You're allowed to eat a snack outside the sukkah, but here's a story that they brought for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai just a taste of the cooked dish. And to the Rabban Gamliel, they brought him just 2 dates and a bucket of water. Both of these are snacks, not a full meal according to any definition. And yet, both of these rabbis said, bring them up to the sukkah. So you see that they, even though technically they didn't have to, nevertheless they wanted to be mahmir, be stringent, and eat it in the sukkah. So that's a good quality. And now the opposite story. Uchshnatnu lo Rabbi Sadok ochel pachot mikabesa netalo b'mapa v'achalo chus lasukkah velo berach acharav. Rabbi Sadok, who's also great sage, he was a kohen, and they gave him a little less than a kabesa. If a kabesa is a whole pita, when you get a whole falafel, they take off the top, which is a problem because the halacha, at least for Sfaradim today, is that you only wash with a beracha if you're planning on having 2 kezetot, a besa, a whole pita. So when you slice off the top, you should not wash with a beracha. You maybe ask the guy, can I have the little piece on top so that you can do it? Although for Birkat Hamazon, even a kezayit, you say Birkat Hamazon, right? So a lot of cases where you might not wash, but still say Birkat Hamazon. Anyway, Rabbi Sadok, not sure what his shiurim were. They weren't necessarily the same as I just said. So when they gave him a little bit less than a kabesa, like a whole falafel, he held it in a kerchief. In other words, he didn't wash his hands. And he ate it outside the sukkah, and he didn't even say Birkat Hamazon. So the Birkat Hamazon, he seems to follow the idea, the opinion that we say Birkat Hamazon only for kabesa, not a kezayit, not our halacha. Why did he put it in a mapa? The Rashi says it was only for cleanliness reasons. Right? It wasn't instead of. There is another halacha. There's no water around for a long time, then you can eat something holding it in a kerchief instead of netilat yadayim. But here, I think the point is that he's not doing netilat yadayim. So we're not really clear what the kerchief is. Maybe it's terumah, he still wanted to protect it somewhat. Anyway, our main point is that he ate, even though it was just a little bit less than a kabesa, and so it's almost a meal. Nevertheless, he said, it's less than that. I'm going to eat outside the sukkah. So the first 2 rabbis showed that they go above and beyond the letter of the law, and that's a good thing to do, but you don't have to. Don't feel guilty if you don't. Even the great Rabbi Sadok ate a snack outside the sukkah. So the Gemara asks, Maaseh listor, regarding the first incident, it looks like we have a halacha, and then we have a story that says the opposite. The halacha in the previous Mishnah. Okay, but the Mishnayot all go in order, all continuous. Mishnah said you can have a snack outside, and then you bring a story of 2 rabbis that made sure to eat in the sukkah, even though they're only eating a little bit of fruit. So we say katani. It's missing words. That's really missing words. You should read it with this interpretation in mind, as if these words were there. If you want to be stringent, go ahead, you can be stringent. You don't have to worry that you are showing off. In other halachot, you shouldn't show off and say, oh, see, I'm better, you should worry about that. But here you don't have to. I mean, after all, maybe you're going to eat a meal. I'm starting off with 2 days, but I'm going to eat more. There's no showing off just because you want to eat in the sukkah. And here's a story. In fact, these two rabbis, they were great rabbis, and that they wanted to be machmir, and they ate it in the sukkah, even if it was just a taste of the cooked dish, or 2 dates and some water. So it's not contradicting the law, but showing that if you want to be stringent, you can. So now quoting the second story, according to this, you see that the maximum amount you can eat, that's still a snack, is a little bit less than an egg, right? So that shows that what's called a seudat keba, an eggful. Remember back before, Rav Yosef said 2 or 3 eggs? And so now, according to this, it's only 1 egg. Abaye said a different amount. We're not sure how much he said, how much does you eat when you're on before the lecture. But this seems to contradict what they said. No, maybe the reason why the Mishnah says one egg, is not because of the Sukkah law, but rather because of Netilat Yadayim and Birkat HaMazon. So we picked an amount, the Mishnah picked an amount that he would be patur from all 3 halachot. But you're right, technically, just for the Sukkah, right, if it was a kabesa, then he would netilah and beracha, but still not get the sukkah until he ate 2 or 3 eggfuls, according to Rav Yosef. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen ve'amen.